It probably doesn't come as a shock that the majority of murders are committed by someone the victim knows. But the planning and cold-hearted nature of these stories is even more chilling. Is it a coincidence that Brian Walshe made murder-related searches right around the time his wife went missing? Ana Walshe, a 39-year-old Massachusetts mother of three, has been missing since New Year's Day 2023. And her husband, 47-year-old Brian Walshe, has been charged with murder. He was initially arrested on a charge of misleading the investigation. As a new year started, Serbian-born Ana was at home before, according to Brian, she took a ride-share to the airport. He said a work emergency occurred and Ana had to fly to Washington, D.C. To date, police haven't been able to confirm these details, instead saying the woman was due to fly 3 days later. Ana was regional general manager at the real estate company Tishman Speyer and often traveled for work. The couple had been celebrating New Year's with a friend who left after 1 a.m. In an interview with I-Team from CBS Boston, that friend, Jem Mutlu, struggled to hold back tears.
She said, "Jem, I know you won't go out on New Year's Eve. I know you'll just stay home by yourself, and Brian and I would love to see you. Just come over. Like, if there's anyone we'd love to see, we'd love to have over to you. Please come." And so I said, of course. Brian had cooked an elaborate meal for us, and we hugged and celebrated and toasted and just what you do over New Year's. And there was a lot of looking forward to the new year. Like, there was no indication of anything other than celebrating the new year, like problems on hold, whatever life's problems were. And life always gives us matters and problems and things to deal with, right? That just always is. But the fact that they hadn't been living in separate homes, she was commuting back and forth, she wasn't seeing the children as often as she would have liked. I mean, she loved everybody. She definitely loved her children dearly. So it was festive. She was texting with friends, and she was sitting next to me at the bar stool and at their kitchen. There was absolutely no indication that any modicum of a tragedy, of disappearance, or anything else could have happened that night.
Mutlu also gave insight into Walshe's relationship.
A part of me had this suspicion all along that there may have been foul play, and that somehow just the story wasn't adding up. My biggest fear had shifted towards the children. Believe it or not, I still have a modicum of hope that somehow I think you got it.
It's believed the 39-year-old left for the airport between 7 and 6 a.m. There was no activity on Ana's phone, credit cards, or social media accounts. Brian Walshe told police he spent New Year's afternoon running errands for his mother at Whole Foods and CVS. But investigators found no receipts, and he was not seen on security video from either store. However, the next day, January 2nd, he was captured on CCTV wearing a surgical mask and gloves and buying $450 worth of goods, including cleaning supplies, mops, and tape at a Home Depot. It would also be the last time Ana's phone would connect to a tower, before it was turned off. By the 4th of January, her employers grew worried. The head of security called Cohasset Police around 11:45 a.m. to request a well-being check. Ana's car was in Washington, and although the company had contacted her husband, he had not filed a missing person report. Brian, meanwhile, had left this voicemail for a friend.
Good afternoon, Brian Walshe. I hope all is going well. I was just reaching out to basically everybody I could. Ana hasn't been in touch for a few days. I was supposed to work today. She hasn't been in. We went to the house and she wasn't there, or looked like she's been there recently. So just wondering if you've spoken to her in the near, recently, like Sunday or in the last 2 days. If so, let me know, or if you know anyone that might have had contact with her, calling everyone. So sorry to bother you. Sure, everything's fine, and you can wish you thanks.
Police then interviewed Brian, who said his wife left for work in Washington at 6:30 a.m., New Year's Day, and he hasn't heard from her since. Investigators also noted that when they arrived to carry out the wellness check, his car seats were down, and a plastic tarp was over them. The tarp was gone when they asked him about it, but blood was found in the vehicle. The ground search was called off just 2 days after it was initiated. By then, Ana had been missing for 6 days. Then, on January 8th, police returned to the Walshe home to execute a search warrant, and Brian Walshe was arrested for misleading their investigation. More than a week later, Brian was officially accused of assaulting and beating his wife with the intent to murder her, as well as of moving her body or remains. In court, the accused stared intently at prosecutors while showing little to no emotion, while they revealed what had led to the arrest. At the Walshe home, there was blood in the basement and a damaged knife with blood on it. They found a hacksaw, other blood-covered items, and Ana's COVID-19 vaccination card in the trash from Brian's mother's house. But the most alarming evidence would be the more than a dozen internet searches over different days. According to prosecutors, in December 2022, before Ana was missing, Brian Googled, "What is the best state to divorce a man in?" And, just an hour before the mother allegedly left for the airport, the accused had used one of their children's iPads.
Same day at 1:02 p.m. he did some more Google searches. What happens to hair on a dead body? At 1:13 p.m., what is the rate of decomposition of a body found in a plastic bag compared to on a surface in the woods? At 1:20 p.m., can baking soda mask or make a body smell good?
Prosecutors claimed that Brian had hired a private investigator in 2022 and routinely visited the Instagram pages of his wife's male friends. In contrast, he says, through his attorney, it was his mother. He has never suspected his wife of having an affair. The 47-year-old is the sole beneficiary of Ana's life insurance policy, totaling more than $2.7 million. Brian Walshe has maintained his not guilty plea to the first-degree murder conviction, which carries a mandatory life sentence in prison without parole in Massachusetts. This was not his first run-in with the law. It has recently come to light that in 2014, Ana Walshe reported to DC police Brian had made a statement over the telephone that he was going to kill her and her friends. The couple were not married yet, and the case was closed after the woman decided not to pursue charges. Then there was his 2019 legal battles. Following the 2018 death of Brian Walshe's father, there was a lawsuit over his father's estate. In them, he was described as a violent liar in affidavits from relatives and friends. Brian was estranged from his dad over allegations of missing money to the tune of $1 million. In 2021, Brian pleaded guilty to 3 counts, including wire fraud after he stole Andy Warhol paintings from a college classmate and commissioned forgeries. Court documents show that he was ordered to forfeit $225,000 and does not appear to have been sentenced to any prison time in that case. Brian was seemingly under house arrest when his wife was last seen, and some of his monitored activity in the following days violates this. Before her disappearance, Ana was reportedly trying to sell off her assets to move to DC. These reports remain unconfirmed, but a condo that the missing woman owned had been sold in a hurry on December 29, 2022. Brian Walshe was denied bail again in August 2023. His defense attorney, Tracy Minor, said that no body had been found and said there is no indication of if she died, how she died, and no murder weapon or motive established. In January 2024, his defense attorney withdrew from the case, and public defender Larry Tipton was assigned to it. The case came with nearly 1,000 pages of discovery for the new attorney to review, and additional DNA testing is expected. A few months later, Brian Walshe had his first hearing in the murder case, where it became clear that they needed more time to review the heaps of discovery submitted in Ana's disappearance. Meanwhile, a federal judge sentenced Walshe in a years-long art fraud scheme that he pleaded guilty to before the alleged murder of his wife. He was sentenced to 37 months in prison for this, and his lawyer is appealing it. The next date in the case was set for May 1st, 2024. Ana Walshe is still missing to date. Today we dive into the chilling narrative of Katherine Knight, the first woman in Australia's history to be sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. What led her to commit such gruesome acts? How did she land up known as Australia's Hannibal Lecter, a woman who planned to cook her lover and serve him to his own children? Katherine Mary Knight's story begins on October 24th, 1955. In the rural Australian town of Tenterfield, her upbringing was riddled with chaos and turmoil. It set the stage for a life that would later send shockwaves through the nation. Her mother, Barbara Ruffin, sparked a scandal in a small community by leaving her husband, Jack, for his friend, Ken Knight. With Ken, she had 4 additional children, including Katherine and her twin, Joy. Right from the start, it was a turbulent childhood. The Knight family gained notoriety for domestic violence and a lack of restraint rather than positive contributions. According to court psychiatrists, Katherine alleged that she was a regular victim of family abuse, starting at the tender age of 11, although she said her father was not among her abusers. Their upbringing was brutal. The children were often disciplined with a dog leash or electrical cord, casting a permanent shadow over their childhood. Before dropping out of school at 15, Katherine was a bully with fits of anger and violent outbursts. She managed to secure a job as a cutter in a clothing factory. Within a year, she left for her dream job at a local abattoir. There, she moved up the ranks swiftly, graduating from handling offal to boning. With this promotion, she was given her own set of butcher's knives, tools she took great interest in. The anatomy of animals fascinated Katherine. In the years to come, she would use these newfound skills in unimaginably horrific ways. At the young age of 19, Katherine entered a new chapter in life when she married David Kellett. This should have been a joyful occasion. Instead, the wedding night was far from romantic. The newlywed attempted to strangle her husband because he had fallen asleep after the couple had been intimate thrice. This violent act set the tone for their entire marriage, and the abuse, shocking and unpredictable, escalated over time. One instance saw her burn all of David's clothes and shoes. The trigger for this outburst? David got home late from a darts competition. However, Katherine's fury did not stop there. She took it a step further by striking him on the back of the head with a frying pan, leaving him with a fractured skull. And her obsession with knives grew by the day. In May 1976, after their first daughter, Melissa Ann, was born, David left Katherine and moved to Queensland, unable to deal with her possessive and violent behavior. The next day, people saw Katherine on the main street, wildly swinging her baby's stroller back and forth. She was admitted to St. Elmo's Hospital in Tamworth for postnatal depression and spent a few weeks there to recover. But things got worse after she left the hospital. She placed Melissa, only 2 months old then, on a train track just before a train was due. Katherine stole an axe, went into town, and threatened to kill several people. Thankfully, a local man known as Old Ted found Melissa on the track and saved her just minutes before the train came. Threats to kill became a common part of Katherine's behavior, causing those around her to live in constant fear. The police arrested the woman and took her back to St. Elmo's Hospital, but she signed herself out the next day, claiming she was okay. Not long after, Katherine attacked a woman with a knife and demanded a ride to Queensland to find David. The woman attempted escape at a service station, but Katherine went on to take a boy hostage until police disarmed her. Again, she was placed in psychiatric care, where she confessed to plans of killing David Kellett and his mother. Hearing this, David moved to Aberdeen to support Katherine. On August 9, 1976, she was released and moved in with David in Brisbane's Woodridge suburb. Here, she worked at Dinmore Meatworks. By 1980, they had another daughter, Natasha. In 1984, Katherine left David and moved back to Aberdeen. Despite returning to work, a back injury led her to a disability pension. She was later given a government house. And then, in 1986, Katherine found a new romantic interest in David Saunders. But, as the dark pattern of Katherine's life unfolded, it quickly became clear that this relationship was no different. Although they moved in together, David Saunders kept his apartment because of Katherine's unpredictable jealousy. In a horrifying incident in 1987, the 32-year-old David's beloved dingo pupped his throat to warn him against infidelity, then knocked him unconscious with a frying pan. The next year, the couple had a daughter, Sarah. When they welcomed their newborn, David put a deposit on a house that Katherine filled with a macabre collection of animal skins, skulls, and weapons. After an argument where she attacked him with an iron and scissors, David retreated to his old apartment. When he came back, he found his clothes destroyed. David Saunders went into hiding while Katherine unsuccessfully tried to locate him. When he returned months later to see Sarah, he discovered Katherine had secured and apprehended violence order against him, claiming she feared him. And her reign of terror was far from over. As the 1990s rolled around, Katherine found her next victim. In 1991, she became romantically involved with John Chillingworth, and the couple had a little boy named Eric. Yet, it was soon apparent that this relationship, like her previous ones, was not destined for tranquility. The usual abusive behavior patterns emerged over the 3 years that Katherine and John were together. But Katherine's relationship with John didn't end because of her abuse. Instead, it was an affair that led to their split. Katherine had been secretly involved with another man, John Price, who she would turn to when she decided to leave her partner. The affair and relationship, seemingly normal, instilled dread in those aware of her violent past. Her love life was often a twisted maze of control, manipulation, and violence. John Price was aware of Katherine's violent reputation when they got together. Her relationship was troubled, and eventually he refused to marry her, resulting in arguments. In retaliation, Katherine sent the footage to Price's boss of items that he had allegedly stolen from work. In turn, he was fired. Bizarrely, the couple got back together, but their fighting became more frequent. In February 2000, after enduring numerous assaults, Price had enough when Katherine stabbed him in the chest. He kicked her out and got a restraining order for himself and his kids. Later, he ominously told his co-workers that if he didn't show up for work the next day, it'd be because Katherine had killed him. Despite their pleas, he went home, fearing she would harm his children if he didn't. Unfortunately, his statement came true. The tragic series of events that marked the end of John Price's life unfolded on a night that began like any other. Earlier that evening, Katherine ensured Price's children were sent to a friend's house. When he came home, they were intimate, a seemingly ordinary couple's activity that starkly contrasted with the horror that was about to play out. After this, Katherine picked up a butcher knife she had placed beside the bed. She stabbed John Price a total of 37 times. Despite his desperate attempts to escape, the 44-year-old could not survive the extensive blood loss from the severe wounds. She didn't stop there. Katherine maimed him and prepared to cook parts of his body with the intention to serve them to his children. In fact, she had set out plates of food with name tags for each child, but they were not home at the time. When John Price did not show up for the next day, his colleagues raised their concerns. And, fortunately, police showed up before the children did. When the police arrived at the scene, they found Katherine unconscious, having consumed a large quantity of pills. However, when the police interviewed her, she denied having any memory of what had happened. A detailed autopsy on Price's body was carried out after her subsequent arrest. The autopsy results showed a multitude of stab wounds on both the front and back of his body, causing significant damage to his heart, lungs, liver, and stomach. The extent of the physical trauma inflicted was indicative of the severe brutality of the crime. Initially, Katherine offered to plead guilty to manslaughter, but the court did not accept this plea, and she was charged with the murder of John Price. She changed her plea to not guilty of murder, and the trial was set out for October 15th, 2001. On the first day, the judge, Barry O'Keefe, offered the 60 jury prospects the option of being excused due to the graphic nature of the photographic evidence, which 5 opted to accept. Several more dropped out when the witness list was read out, and the rest were confirmed. Katherine's attorneys then made the surprise announcement that she had changed her plea back to guilty. The jurors were dismissed, leaving sentencing to the judge. With her plea changed, Katherine didn't need to testify. However, the judge ordered a psychiatric evaluation to determine if she understood the consequences, which she did. During the assessment, Katherine claimed to have no memory of the crime, and the psychiatrist who examined her diagnosed her with borderline personality disorder. Although no full-scale IQ test was conducted, the killer appeared to be of average intelligence. The next day, the judge gave her a life sentence without parole, unprecedented in Australian history. To date, Katherine Knight is at the Silverwater Women's Correctional Centre in New South Wales. Her nickname behind the bars is the Nana and the Boss. She remains the first woman in Australia's history to be sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. How do you convict a man of conspiracy to commit murder when the only witness, the victim herself, is in a vegetative state? Today, we're taking a look at the Angel Lynn kidnapping case, one that rocked the Leicester area and had people petitioning for stronger sentences against offenders like Che Bosco. This case takes us back to 2019. Angel Lynn is a bubbly 18-year-old, the fourth of Patty and Nikki Lynn's 6 children, and on the path to becoming a forensic scientist. Friends and family described her as the life of the party, someone who was always laughing about and had dreams of traveling the world one day. Before any of that, though, Angel wanted to complete her education and become a forensic scientist, something she'd been dreaming of since she was little. In late 2019, she met another 18-year-old named Che Boskill through a few mutual friends. While talking to the producers for the kidnapping of Angel Lynn, Patty revealed that he'd never liked Che. Not just because he didn't have an education or had ever worked a day in his life, but because he tried to control Angel's every move. Patty revealed that Angel had boyfriends before, and the family was always open and honest about relationships with one another. In Che's case, however, Angel decided to stay secretive. According to Nikki, this was because the whole household disapproved of him. Patty went as far as to claim that Angel was embarrassed by the teen's loud behavior and decided to keep him away from her family. Nikki also revealed that Angel, who'd once loved dressing up and going out with her friends, would now dress shabbily and only hang out with Che. The mother said that whenever the teen boyfriend pulled up by her house, Angel would get fidgety and start rushing to get out of the door as soon as she could. Nikki suspected he had a temper, and Angel wanted to stay on his good side. Yes, her parents did try to intervene. Patty often tried talking to Angel about Che's recklessness, and Nikki begged her to leave him. Nothing worked because, according to Angel, the two were in love. Things changed in October 2019 when Che was arrested for conspiracy to commit burglaries. According to Patty, the 18-year-old's sole source of income was hot wiring cars. Once, when he'd planned to steal as many cars as possible in the Lecter area, police caught on and arrested him. Che was sentenced to serve time from October 2019 to January 2020. Angel's parents were hopeful that this would finally snap their daughter out of her obsession with him. That only lasted a short while. It's believed that when Che realized that Angel was potentially slipping away from him, he started calling from the prison to the house phone and the house phone only. This was odd for Nikki, who thought that if Che was so adamant about talking to Angel, he could have called on her cell phone. It would only become clear that he might have wanted to ensure the teen was home from 6 p.m. onwards. Knowing her parents disapproved of her relationship, Angel snuck out to be with Che most nights after his release. Patty also began noticing that Angel was lying about the tiniest things. She became angrier and meaner, lashing out at her parents and siblings. This was uncharacteristic of Angel, who was once the sweetest girl in the family. Things kept getting worse and worse. A few of Angel's friends had reportedly noticed bruises on her stomach and arms and begged her to leave Che. Again, she had confided in them that her boyfriend would lose his temper over the slightest things and lash out at her. Her parents caught a glimpse of what Che was capable of when he dropped by the Lynn family residence unannounced one day, screaming and shouting for Angel to give him back his money. The 18-year-old had allegedly given his girlfriend money to hold on to while he was in prison. She'd returned most of it, but Che claimed he was short of 80 pounds. Patty and Nikki went up to him and angrily gave him the cash, threatening to call the police if he ever showed up at their home again. Despite Che's violent outbursts and threats, the parents were surprised that Angel was angry with them, claiming that the two had just made matters worse for her. Nikki later claimed that she tried to make her daughter understand that he was a toxic partner, but she was having none of it. A few days after the altercation, Angel moved out of her family home and into Che, his 3 siblings, and his mother, Katherine Norris's Northborough home. There was an incident where the police were called after a neighbor heard screaming and yelling. The neighbors claimed that they'd heard slapping and thudding sounds and assumed that someone was being assaulted. This was followed by another event where Katherine called an ambulance, fearing that Angel was having a seizure. It was actually a panic attack. Friends also claimed that Angel was basically at Che's mercy during this time. She worked as a cleaner while he was allegedly part of a gang of 6 motor thieves. He controlled their finances, made her give him her entire salary, and would keep any of the benefits they received. Things would only go from bad to worse. On September 17th, 2020, Angel was kidnapped. CCTV camera footage shows that she'd driven Che's brother's vans to her job site with Che, Rocco Sansom, and Mason Cooper in their car on the day. It happened leading up to 10:36 a.m., but apparently Angel had made it clear to Che that she was done with him, for good this time. She exited the vehicle, and so did Mason. While she was going down to work, Che pulled the van back around, picked her up, and carried her to the truck. Witnesses reported that Angel was kicking and screaming to let her go, but he forced her into the middle seat of the front bench. She was now sitting between Rocco, who was driving, and Che, who had his hand out on the dashboard by the passenger's side, apparently to keep her from exiting. What happened after became a case of he said, she said, and, as I said earlier, Angel was unable to tell her side. In this case, Che claimed that the couple fought, but it was nothing serious. However, since they were driving around, he refused to let her out until they talked over their issues. She screamed at him, called him a bad man, and, according to him, said she wanted to die. Angel then opened the passenger's side door and jumped out. But prosecutors refuted this, saying it was clear that Angel feared for her life, begging Che to let her go. They alleged he'd threatened to kill her if she tried to make a move for the door. What both sides do agree on is that Angel Lynn flew out of a moving car at 60 miles per hour. She suffered severe brain injuries that left her unable to walk or talk. According to the state, her injuries weren't consistent with a jump. She had to be pushed out with full force to sustain the sort of skull fractures and brain damage that she did. The trial also pointed out a huge blowout just days prior, where Che had allegedly pushed Angel against the wall. She told her friends it was the final straw, and she was ready to leave him for good. Statistically, DV victims are the most at risk when they try to leave, and this might be no exception. After the incident, witnesses reported that Che and Rocco stopped some 10 cars ahead, with Che rushing out of the van, crying and screaming that he was a bad man and that someone had to help Angel. Rocco was also crying. Police promptly arrested the two and found that Rocco was driving under the influence of a controlled substance. Nikki and Patty rushed to the Queen's Medical Center in Nottingham, where they were told that Angel had little to no chance of survival. She was found lying near dead by the carriageway along A6, and neurologists feared that she'd never wake up. However, after a 6-hour emergency surgery, they revealed that Angel had pulled through. Patty said the doctors told them not to keep their hopes up, and Angel was still most likely to die one day. Angel couldn't even breathe on her own. Jay Boskill was found guilty on all accounts: kidnapping, engaging in coercive and controlling behavior, and perverting the course of justice. However, he was cleared of a conspiracy to commit murder. During the sentencing, his mother testified that the only person who knows what happened that day is Angel. And since she can no longer speak, imprisoning Clay for life for conspiracy to kill would be unfair. At the same time, Angel's family believed that a 7-year sentence for the man who'd been tormenting their daughter was unfair. Eventually, Che was sentenced to a 12-year consecutive sentence, and Rocco was sentenced to 21 months behind bars. Che allegedly called his mother from prison, screaming and cursing at her for being the reason he was in there. He claimed she didn't defend him enough. There's a long and painful road ahead for Angel Lynn. September 2020's incident left her for dead, yet she somehow managed to pull through. Today, not only can she breathe, sign, and move the right side of her body, but in 2023, she also managed to take her first steps in the years since the incident and say her first word since the attack: Mum. In an exclusive interview with Good Morning Britain, Nikki recalled that day.
She was groaning. So it started that I said, Angel, you know, if you're making them sort of sounds, you must be able to say something. And that's where I just started making sounds myself, and she just came out. I had no warning or anything that she was going to speak, because I'm one of them, I thought she'd never speak again. I really thought ever. So like I said, I thought she'd never speak. I thought that was it. But I think even they think now, wow, the doctor sat there, didn't he? Said she's just so strong.
Although her daughter might never be the same again, they're trying to make her every day a little better than the last for her recovery. What does it take to commit the perfect crime? Even after years and years of planning, meticulously studying case reports from past criminal masterminds, and with the best forensic evidence evading tactics on the face of the earth, there's still a pretty good chance of getting caught. However, with the case of Kay Mortensen, the real perpetrators could have gone their entire lives without ever facing prosecution for their gruesome crimes. Were they criminal masterminds, or were they just lucky? Today, we're talking about the near-perfect crime that was nothing more than a stroke of pure luck. Everyone in the city of Ephraim, Utah, knew Kay Mortensen. If they didn't know him by name, they either knew him as this sweet-looking retired university professor or the 70-year-old man obsessed with firearms. He'd been enjoying his retirement with his wife, Darla, by spending time visiting his 3 kids and grandchildren. Locals described him as a survivalist. According to friends and family, he was convinced that the apocalypse was coming. If not that, then an uprising was in the works. Or someone would come for him and his family one day. In any case, Kay wanted to be prepared. He'd transformed his home into a fortress of firearms of all sizes, spread across the basement, the bedroom, and the attic. Darla apparently disapproved, but went along with it anyway since Kay was an otherwise responsible man who knew when to use them, and how to store them away. It's important to note here that the 70-year-old didn't just have a massive collection. He had an impressive one too. With firearms dating back centuries, top-of-the-line weapons, and guns that could go up to thousands of dollars, they were Kay's prized possessions. The only thing he loved most in the world was his son, Roger, who was probably his best friend. The two would spend just about every other evening together. Roger had a heart condition and was on disability, and Kay had recently retired. This meant that the two of them had more time to sit back and enjoy time with each other. On November 16, 2009, Roger and his wife, Pam Mortensen, went to Kay's residence to spend time with him after Darla had left for Salt Lake City for the birth of her grandchild. This would likely be the only part of Roger and Pam's testimony that police and a grand jury, hearing the case months later, believed. What happened next is flimsy. According to the couple, an unknown man opened the door and welcomed them in. When Roger asked about Kay's whereabouts, the man promptly shut the door behind them and told them they were at the wrong place at the wrong time. That's when another man approached the pair with a gun. One of the two assailants then zip-tied the couple in the living room while the other went upstairs. The second man then followed him. Meanwhile, Roger started crying and praying for God to spare their lives. When the men returned, Roger stopped praying, and the intruders told him to carry on. Then they told the couples that their lives would be spared if they didn't tell the police exactly what the attackers wanted them to. And they had their driver's licenses to make it happen. Pam and Roger were ordered to call 911 after the intruders left and tell the police that 3 black men had invaded their home and tied them up. The 2 men there were, as Pam would later describe them, clear-cut white men. The couple nodded their heads, and one of the assailants left a knife a little away from Roger before they left.
She either knocked on the door or rang the doorbell. I believe she knocked on the door.
I had this door opened because I knocked on the wooden door. I didn't ring the doorbell. And I said, "Is Kay here?" They proceeded to say he is and said he was upstairs, and they let us in.
The other guy shut the door. I turned around and looked. Somebody was walking down the stairs with a gun in their hand. He pointed at us and said, "You're here at the wrong time. Put out your hands." I took the knife and I cut my wire tie and I cut my wife's wire tie. I said, "Stay here, I'll see if their car is gone." And I got up and I walked up these steps. I looked out the window to where the vehicle was parked and it was now gone. Came back downstairs and my wife was talking at the time to 911 dispatch. And I said, "He is dead."
Roger claimed that he dragged himself to get the knife, freed himself, and then his wife. He instructed her to call 911 while he went upstairs to check on Kay. The call was later made public, and you can hear the woman take a moment to think when the dispatcher asks her to describe the men. You also hear Roger come in later and tell the dispatcher that they were white.
What's the emergency? He came upstairs with my father and was held hostage. Who held you hostage? We don't know. Okay, the guy that had the gun, what did he look like? Was he white guy, black guy, Hispanic? I don't know. How many were there? How many guys were there? There could have been. Were they white, black, Hispanic?
2 white.
3 white males. Okay, but how?
2 white males.
2 white males?
Upstairs, Roger found Kay's lifeless body hunched over the bathtub with his throat slit. Kay Mortensen had just been killed. But who done it? Police rushed to the scene and immediately started looking into Pam and Roger as possible suspects. Why? According to recovered body cam footage, the home was very well organized for what the couple were alleging as a home invasion. Also, Kay had no marks on his body, indicating a struggle. The evidence pointed toward the fact that the victim probably knew his assailants. The police questioned Pam and Roger, who offered conflicting accounts. Pam claimed neither man wore gloves and that they threatened to kill them, while Roger contended one wore gloves and denied any threats were made.
My name's Eric Knudsen, by the way.
I'm Pam.
He's a cantankerous old fart and set his mouth to everybody. And they had blue fuzzy gloves. They looked like women's winter driving gloves or something. The fuzzy kind.
I know they had purple gloves on. Purple, you're...
Quite frankly, I think the story's a bunch of crap. I think the story's a bunch of crap that you and Roger have come up with. Okay?
So you don't believe?
I'm trying to.
Does it sound too rehearsed? Or...
Yeah.
Okay.
Is your husband capable of killing somebody?
I need to get a drink.
I wouldn't hope. I wouldn't think he is. I wouldn't think that he's capable of killing his father.
Investigations continued till August 4th, 2010, when the Utah police decided that they had more than enough evidence to convict Pam and Roger for Kay's murder. Besides a flimsy recount of the event and the evidence that disproved a home invasion, investigators also uncovered that Roger was the sole beneficiary of Kay's estate. He had the most to gain from his father's death.
Sole beneficiary, but I get a big share of my dad's millions too.
I know we're in a lot of debt, but I personally would not have my father-in-law killed for his money.
Why did it take till August to convict them? For one, Kay's home had actually been robbed. Several guns from his basement were missing. Initially, the Utah County Sheriff claimed that the key to the whole case was finding the weapons. However, according to Pam and Roger, the sheriff was under increasing pressure to solve the case and abandoned that theory for an early conviction. The couple seemed like the perfect couple to convict for Kay's murder, and a jury thought so too. After discovering that Roger shared the fascination for guns, they determined that Kay's son and daughter-in-law should stand trial for his murder. The pair were held in custody while waiting trial. However, 4 months into serving jail time, a significant breakthrough was made in Kay Mortenson's murder.
Walking it out, like it didn't happen. And then I just watched the news, and these people are gonna go to jail. Prison, probably life sentence. They pulled out their guns and told him to put zip ties on. He said that he wasn't willing at first, but we eventually said that they took him to the bathroom and bent him over the tub. He said that right after that they heard their doorbell ring, and it was the two.
In December 2010, Rachel Bond reported to the Utah County Sheriff's Office that her ex-husband, Martin Bond, confessed to participating in Kay's murder alongside Ben Reddig. They intended to steal Kay's valuable gun collection for quick cash. Martin, who had long-standing familiarity with Kay, did not plan to kill him, but was implicated, and the situation escalated. Rachel recounted that during the theft, Kay attempted to defend himself, leading to a struggle. This altercation happened just as Pam and Roger arrived. Martin admitted to restraining the couple, while Ben fatally attacked Kay upstairs, allegedly to eliminate a potential witness. Rachel's account painted a tragic picture of betrayal and unintended consequences.
They tentatively said hello. So they just kind of walked in. At that point, I said, "This is the wrong place, wrong time." And they were obviously pretty shocked at that point. Roger cried a lot. Pam was a little more calm. She basically was just very agreeable, saying, "We'll say anything you want us to say," that kind of thing. Too much had been done already. I didn't want anything more to happen.
Police quickly apprehended the two, and that's when Ben made a confession of his own. He claimed he was the one who tied Pam and Roger, and Martin killed Kay. Investigators also recovered about 14 of the stolen guns from a site where the two had buried them, with their registration numbers scratched off. They also found Roger's driver's license in Ben's possession. After spending 4 months in prison for a crime they hadn't committed, Pam and Roger came after the prosecutors and officers who discredited them and ruined their reputation. The couple claimed that they were still receiving threats from locals who believed they were guilty.
And that we aren't the people that we were made out to be.
They were at a loss as to what to do, and it was easier for them to blame us than to actually spend the time to look at who could be guilty.
The pair tried to sue the prosecution and officers who had testified against them for attorney's fees and pain and suffering. Unfortunately, they ended up with nothing. A judge dismissed the case on the grounds that witness testimonies, in this case the officers, could not be used against them in another trial. Regarding the prosecution, a judge determined that they were only doing their job, a job done too well in this case. Pam and Roger continued to plead their case, claiming that not only did they lose Kay that night, but also a huge part of their lives. In 2011, a jury found that Martin was the mastermind behind the crime and sentenced him to life without the possibility of parole. Ben, on the other hand, received a 25 to life prison sentence. Kay Mortensen's killers could have gone scotch-free because Pam and Roger were portrayed as the perfect killers. However, Martin Bond's confession and his ex-wife's guilty conscience eventually caught up to him and Ben Reddick. Before you go, I'd love to know if you like having multiple stories in one video. Let me know in the comments down below. And if there are any cases you'd like for me to cover, you can email them to me using the address on my channel. Thank you.